Here bringing you with a brand new video today, and today we have the first unveiling of the very first Fusion Pendulum monster. So without any further ado, because we got a lot to cover because this is a new archetype as well, let's just jump right into it. So the first card that we have here is the main man himself. This is Supreme King Dragon Zark. It is a level 12 Dark Dragon type Pendulum Fusion effect monster with 4,000 attack across the board in a Pendulum scale of 1. So that's pretty decent, right? One Pendulum scale. I mean, you're probably not going to be putting this card in your Pendulum scale all that often, but the card is pretty good. Or the Pendulum effect is pretty interesting. The Fusion Synchro and it exceeds effect monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects, which is really good because your opponent can't go into Abyss Dweller to stop your effects from happening. Your opponent can't go into Karen Gorgon and stop and prevent it from and it'll prevent it from targeting something else instead of the cards that you want. It's a pretty good. This is a pretty interesting floodgate type effect on a Pendulum monster. And the second effect is once per turn, when your opponent adds a cards to their hand outside of their draw phase, you could destroy that card. So this card is completely useless. This effect is completely useless against Fire Kings, because if they just add Garunix, you'll just give them a free Garunix, but that's not really relevant, right? This card is kind of interesting because it kind of just inherently stops Shadow Mist. It stops cards that easily search cards. I think it stops Manifest Combination. It stops stuff like it stops stuff in Mermails and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good effect, I think. So the fusion materials are 1 Dragon Fusion monster, 1 Dragon type Synchro monster, 1 Dragon type Exceed monster, and 1 Dragon type Pendulum monster. So it's pretty stringent on the materials, but I think it's not that impossible to do. I think all of these cards are relatively easy to pull off. Odd Eyes Pendulum monster, Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, but it's just going to be really inconsistent. And you must fusion summon this card first, and it can't be special summoned other ways. But it has 4 effects, so maybe it's worth it. So we'll see about that. If this card is special summon, destroy all cards your opponent controls. I mean, that's not too bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's not too bad. This card also cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So it's a built-in Magic Spectre, which is pretty good. I think that's actually a decent effect. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon 1 Supreme King Servant Dragon monster from your main deck or extra deck. So we'll talk about that in a minute too. It's one of the monsters. We'll talk about that in a second. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can place this card in the Pendulum zone. So basically, you will always have a scale of 1. So it's a pretty good card. I'm not sure if it's really too relevant to summon this card. They could have made this card a lot better. But I think if you're playing the Supreme King, you're probably going to be playing one of this, because it is a Pendulum monster and you can just summon it over and over again. And the second card is Supreme King Servant Dragon Dark Verm. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that. Is a level 4 Dark Dragon type Pendulum effect monster with 1800 attack and 1200 defense and the Pendulum scale of 5. So Magic Spectre have a Pendulum scale of 5, and that's actually a decent scale because it doesn't stop you from summoning level 4 monsters. That's a pretty good card. The only Pendulum effect this card has is once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can place 1 Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your extra deck, from your deck into your Pendulum zone. Also, you cannot Pendulum summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Dark monsters. So, for example, if you're playing Evil Storms with this card, you could just basically summon Evil Storm monster with this card. It's a decent effect. It basically just completes. It's a 1-card scale. I don't really like 1-card scales, but I mean, if it's a Pendulum scale of 5, it can't be too detrimental. 1-card scales in the past that we've seen have been completely broken, and this one seems relatively balanced considering the fact that it's a Pendulum scale of 5, and it's not that hard. And then you go and special summon Dark monsters, so it kind of limits itself. And the monster effect, it has 2. You can only use each effect of this card once a turn. If this card is normal summon or special summon, you can add 1 Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your hand. So it's a Stratos. That's all that it is. If this card is in your graveyard while you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. So that's actually a pretty interesting effect. I mean, it's probably not too uncommon that this card is in your graveyard. If this card gets Solemn Strike, you could basically just be like, oh, okay, I'll just special summon this card. I'll have something on the board. it's not too relevant effect, but I think it's a defense mechanism against cards like Solemn Strike. So I think it's a decent card. I think, or a decent effect at least. So I think we'll see this card being played in the Servant deck. Obviously at 3 because it's the Stratos, but the second effect is decent too. And we have something kind of interesting. This is the first Pendulum Scale 13 monster. So this is Supreme King Gate Infinity. It is a level 7 Dark Fiend type Pendulum effect monster with 0 attack, 0 defense. With a Pendulum Scale of 13, as I said. The Pendulum effect is you can if you control a monster, you cannot Pendulum summon and this effect cannot be negated. So, for example, if you control, let's say, I don't know, you control the guy above that we just talked about, the dragon. You cannot negate that. You cannot Pendulum summon, which is kind of interesting. And it's kind of a prohibitor, but I think it's okay with this deck. I think it might actually be okay. And the second effect is once per turn, if you control Supreme King Dragon Zark, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and gain life points equal to its current attack. So this card's actually, that effect is actually decent, because I don't think there's enough ways to gain life points in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And this card does that quite good. You target their biggest monster and you're gonna gain a crap ton of life points. That's pretty good. I think it's safe to say that this Pendulum's effect is pretty decent. Once per turn, you can target one other face-up card you control, destroy both this card and that card, and if you do, special summon one Dragon-type Xyz monster or Dragon-type Pendulum monster from your extra deck, but its attack and defense becomes 0. Its effect is negated. Also, it cannot be used for the materials of a Synchro or Xyz summon. So basically, you're giving up 2 cards. You're giving up this card and another monster in order to summon a Dragon-type Xyz or Pendulum monster. So the Pendulum monster you're probably going to be summoning more often than not because it can just be recycled, and it can just, when it dies, you can just summon it back again. That's fine, and the Xyz monster is definitely fine. You're definitely using this to combo out the big guy up top. So you're probably going to be using, and this card also isn't a name once per turn, so you could just basically have 2 on the field somehow. If you have 2 on the field and 2 other monsters on the field, which isn't terribly hard to do in a Pendulum deck, you pop them both. You special summon a Dragon, Xyz, and a Pendulum monster, and you basically have 2 cards already set up for your combo. I think this is a pretty good effect. When this card is destroyed by card effect, battle, or card effect in the monster zone, you can place this card in your Pendulum zone. That's actually really decent. This card has a built-in protection that says, "Oh hey, if I die, I'm gonna just go pop myself into the Pendulum zone." That's really good. And this is also interesting because this is the highest scale of a monster that we've ever seen so far, and it's actually decent, and it's actually generic, which is weird for the most part. And the third card is Supreme King Gate 0. It is a Dark Fiend Pendulum monster, level 7, 0 attack, 0 defense, scale of 0, which is another new one. This is the lowest scale that you could possibly get unless they add negative pendulum scales, which is going to be retarded. But I still think this card that's a pretty good effect. Again, it is also not generic. For the pendulum, it doesn't say you can only special summon Supreme King monsters. It doesn't say anything like that. You can just straight up special summon any monsters that you want between levels 0 and 13. So it's pretty good. The first special effect is if you control Supreme King Zark, you take no damage. Fair enough. Once per turn, if there is a Supreme King Gate Infinity in your other Pendulum zone, you can destroy 2 cards in the Pendulum zone, and if you do, add 1 Polymerization and Fusion spell card from your deck to your hand, except Diffusion Wave Motion. They probably just errated the name of that card and just basically just not have this text in there, but. Adding Polymerization and adding a Fusion spell card is pretty decent. You could just basically search off its Fusion, go into your Northern Place, and go ham. This is a pretty good effect. You could probably combo this off with a lot of other things as well. That being said, keep in mind that this is a 0 scale. You're probably not going to play. Or you're probably not going to play the level 5 in your Pendulum Scale Zone because 1, it deactivates the second effect, and 2, it and 2, it's a 5 scale. Also, side note, this card can summon Abyss Magir in Metaphos, so that's a decent thing, I guess. And the monster effects is once per turn, you can target one other face-up monster your opponent your control, destroy both this card and that card, and if you do, you can special summon one Dragon type fusion monster or Dragon type Tinker monster from your extra deck. But its attack and defense becomes 0. Its effects are negated. Also cannot be used as a material for a secret or Xyz summon, but it can be used for a fusion summon, which is really weird. Because if you have this card and the other guy, I believe you could just straight up summon Norden. That's and whatever it's called, whatever that card is called, NTSS. I guess that's how it's whatever. This card is also an inhibitor to your combo. To be fair, you're probably not going to have a method of getting all 4 of them out simultaneously, because that seems like a lot of work, and that seems like a really impossible 5 card slots. I think it's as seeing it right now, I think it's kind of just meh at best. I think it's okay. Granted, you can Granted, it does help you get out your combos, and also it does start drop polymerization. Also, if this card is in your monster zone as destroyed by battle or card effects, you can place this card in the Pendulum. I guess they're gonna have. I guess they're gonna have all the same effects. I guess it's a pretty good effect. I think it's gonna be decent. I think this card's gonna be relatively good. So, yeah. And the last card is kind of a normal monster, it doesn't really matter, is Spiral, the Mythic Radiant Dragon, level 8 worm type normal monster, 2900 attack across the board. If you guys don't remember Spiral Dragon, or Spiral Serpent, then you probably just got into the game. This card is an old card, but... well, Spiral Dragon is. This card is relatively new, but anyway, guys, tell me what you guys think about these cards in the comment section down below. I will see you in the next video. This has been Team Metamorphose signing off.